Hey y'all, welcome to Uncle Dan's Front Porch. Why don't y'all just come right on up, get yourself a cup of coffee, sit down, and let's chat a little bit. This morning, I want to talk to you about heart surgery. And no, I'm not a surgeon, and no, I don't think I'm going to be having any heart surgery anytime soon. At least that's not what I'm planning on. But I don't know if y'all noticed, but the whole world has gone crazy, and there's all kinds of evil stuff going on. And I just got to thinking about this because of some recent events in my community. And I got to thinking about this, and all of us, we need to take a look at ourselves because all of us have the potential of doing some really evil things. And I know you're probably thinking, look, I'm not an evil person. Well, the creator of the universe, the person who designed you, had some things to say about your heart that you probably ought to think about at least a little bit. One of the people that he inspired to write the Bible, or write a part of the Bible, Matthew, he copied down a part of a statement that Jesus made. And Jesus says, when he was walking this planet, that it's from the heart that things like stealing and lying and murder and adultery, that's where they come from. And they come from thoughts that are entertained. And they kind of just eventually come to be. Our thoughts become actions. Now, Solomon, the wisest guy that ever lived, he gave this instruction to anybody that would pay attention to him. And in fact, you can still see that instructions today in the book of Proverbs, chapter 4. He says we need to guard our heart. Now, if Jesus says we got some heart issues and Solomon says we need to guard our heart, probably ought to start paying attention. Well, when the nation of Israel was going through a very tough time during the Old Testament period, two prophets had some interesting things to say. Jeremiah's observation in chapter 17 of his book, called Jeremiah, he says, your heart is the most deceitful thing and the most wicked thing that you could observe. And in Ezekiel records God's words. God says to the nation of Israel, I'm going to have to do heart surgery on you because there's obviously the heart is the issue. You can't help yourself from doing the wrong thing. Now, in the New Testament tells us that we've inherited this natural bend to do the wrong thing because of Adam and Eve's sin way back in the very beginning of the Bible. That's why you probably ought to go back and read Genesis. The first 10 chapters tell us a lot about today's present time. So in the New Testament, God starts reveals his plan of heart surgery. In fact, Jesus says directly to Nicodemus, one of the spiritual leaders that was trying to figure this whole thing out. He says, Nicodemus, you need to be born again. That's again referring to that heart surgery that God says needed to happen. In Matthew chapter 5, Jesus says you have to realize that you have a problem. You have to admit it. John the Baptist was preaching this message of repentance, which means to agree with God and to change course in your life. When the followers of Jesus, his closest followers, the disciples, when they were asked, what must I do to be saved? The response is that we have to believe that Jesus was actually raised from the dead, and that we have to make him our master, the guy in charge. We no longer need to be in charge. And that is the transaction of receiving him, and we become adopted children of God. That, my friends, is the only way we can effectively address this issue of evil that is inside of us. We need to think about that long before the evilness inside of us takes root and becomes full-blown and impacts our family, our community in such negative ways as murder and all kinds of other evil stuff. This is Uncle Dan on his front porch. I'm inviting you to think about, have you had heart surgery? Have a blessed week.